Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the fifth podcast of the Real ROI of Tech. My name is Matthew Guarini, and I'm the Executive Director of the TBM Council, and I'm joined today by Howard Rubin.
Hello, Matt. I should have brought my black T-shirt, but okay, I'm here in my blue dress shirt. So go ahead. Thank you for
We're
having
going
me.
all Steve Jobs today.
Yeah.
Hey, what we wanted to talk about today, this is, like I said, our fifth podcast. And the thing I want to talk about today, there was just a survey that came out. It was a joint effort between SAP and Oxford. And in the survey, they came out and they were looking across all sizes of companies, 2,600 data points. And they found out that the average company is spending like $38 million on AI, but they're only getting about 9.9 million in tangible AI benefits. And so tangible is like real financial returns. So the first question I would have out to you, Howard, is that's about a 25% return that you're looking at. Why is that? Why are people missing the number by so much?
So number one, I'm guessing from my experience, especially with larger companies, the 25% return is actually overstated. Survey stuff is funny, but let's say it is 25%. Okay. And why they're getting it is it's like if you build it, they will come, but you don't know who's coming. So what happens is you got to engineer this stuff backwards. So TBM gives you a base of cost. You need to know where that cost is going, where you expect the return, and you need to engineer stuff you're doing by not launching 1,000 flowers or whatever it is into space and seeing what hits. You have to have real targeted value management on top of this stuff to see where the value comes out. And you're starting to see that from directives and companies. If you watch the headlines the past couple of weeks, like one company says, we want everyone to use AI, but only when they need it, or use AI, but don't use the expensive spread. Because companies are starting to figure out that this is like letting 1,000 flowers bloom. But no, you have to actually have very targeted, focused on value management and be ready to harvest the benefits of that stuff. And that's what's been missing, is the idea of really, here's where I'm getting value and what I engineered to do it. And I'm sorry for talking so much, because most companies are reporting what are called vanity metrics. How many use cases do they have? He who dies with the most use cases he who dies with the most use cases wins. It doesn't work that way. So it's really the process of value management, which exists in all time for technology, and it's exacerbated with the world of AI because there are too many choices and too ways to spend money.
So let's unpick two things there. So the first one I want to go to is, this idea of value management. And when you dive into the way, if you always, let's go back to even RPA, robotic process automation, and things like that. Automation, when people have estimated the benefits of it, going back now, 10 years or something like that, they have always missed the estimates time after time and after again. Now, what's interesting of what we're seeing now is they might be missing on things like metrics like, cost savings or productivity, but they're gaining benefits in areas that they're not expecting as much. One in particular one is customer insights. So this speaks to this idea of value, right? Value is more than just a dollar sheet, a dollar on a balance sheet, a dollar on an income statement. And so how do you talk to people about that when you try to get them to think about value? How expansive do you get?
Well, you did a great job at doing that. So if you look at basically, value to a business, and you mentioned the customer side, but value is clearly around the money side of it. So the money side is what's your operational excellence and efficiency? How are you improving that? But you mentioned the customer. So customer becomes, what are you doing with the customer when it comes to net promoter score? But what's underneath that are things about resiliency and security and a whole bunch of intangible things. So you really need to take a look at value in terms of, you might call it tangible things and intangible things, and even the buildup of knowledge. So you need like a basic glossary of what value is, where it shows up. And some of these things are the second cousin of shareholder value, because you're getting customer insights. Eventually that's going to turn to shareholder value through sales and loyalty and other things that you're doing. So you really need to develop for a company a list of what value is. And there's value, financial value, there's value to the customer. There's other kinds of value, which is even staff retention and talent development. And there's the process stuff. You talk about workflows. So the short answer is there are many aspects of value. You need to understand where they are and how they thread through through your whole strategy. And that actually comes up with the issue you're dealing with. You need to know what you're targeting. And is it a primary result of the shareholders and balance sheet, or is it a secondary thing? You do something which changes something, and have a whole value creation network which has tangible and intangible things. And again, On the other side of even more intangible. So you're getting employee retention because people want to use AI and they have more value in their jobs and things like that. They have the training, so they stick longer. So I'm giving you a
It's a,
long answer, but it's the tangible versus non-tangible value and understanding the paths through them to create value, and it's your value network in your company and what you're going to hit using your AI tools.
yeah, so I love I think you need to be expansive on tangible, but then I think you need to bring in those intangible, because I think the thing that people are missing, and it's taking longer, and that's what often people don't want to see, those longer timelines, is how do you build up those intangibles? Because that's what's going to enable you to re-engineer the company.
So one of the big breakthroughs in measurement was 1992 when Harvard Business Review published this thing called the Balanced Business Scorecard from Norton and Kaplan, and they talked about there's customer value, there's financial, customer, process, and talent. 1997, a company called Scandia developed what they call the Scandia Navigator. And lo and behold, it says companies have different kinds of capital. There's the dollar capital, there's financial capital, but there's non-financial capital, and that's human capital and knowledge capital. So just think that there's a whole history that goes back 30 years that people have just first starting to capitalize on, with a real AI balanced scorecard that has the financial and intangible capital, non-financial
Absolutely.
capital there. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's what they
No,
have to
that's
think
okay.
about.
So let's do this now. So one of the things that, as you talk to people, as I talk to members of TBM or just companies that I come across, when I ask them this question about, are you getting value? They often say, we're building towards it, right? And, this is an investment that'll yield value over time. I'm like, fantastic. And then I'll pose the question, and I'm like, well, what happens as you miss? So if you're projecting that your savings are X, you're only getting a fraction of X. How do people start to think about that? How does that become substantial to a company's brand or to their market value? How should they think about that?
Yeah, understanding misses are incredibly important. And the best example I can give you is that you're a shareholder, and I may have used this example before, but there's one of the banks spending $3 billion a year on AI. They have 3 billion shares of stock. That's $1 a share on this stuff. That represents 5% of the EPS. So if they get no value out of that, nothing offsetting that, that's 5% of the EPS. So their risk of not getting AI right is about 5% of their earnings per share. And companies need to get to shareholder metrics on the financial side. It's much easier. And look at that. And what does a 5% miss on EPS mean if you haven't offset it with something else? It kills your market capitalization, and shareholders only have some limited time. So I'd say it's important to start looking at your IT spending overall and your AI spending as if you were a shareholder, looking at its load on the financial measures, then looking at the pathways for the intangible measures, which will eventually affect the balance sheet of the financial stuff that the market has. I think the markets have patience for promises of the future. Like one of the major financial services companies, like last February in their Investor Day presentation, said, we're going to get benefits in revenue and customer and all this other stuff that will ultimately accrue to people. Well, ultimately is a big fuzzy word. So then the shareholder says, so when the heck is it going to show up? But you better have that there. So that's one of the issues. You have to connect the dots,
Yeah.
especially for profit. In public sector, by the way, where does it show up? Your government's busy with their stuff too. So where does it show up in impact on health, education, welfare, and
Mhm.
safety, and a whole bunch of other stuff? So there are ways of doing it for both sectors, public and private sector.
Absolutely. And one point on the stock price, stock price is a forward indicator of the future value of the firm, right? And so, if you're going to miss it one quarter, all of a sudden, does that create expectations for the future? So the drop in the value could be more significant than just, 5% from your example. So it's a real challenge for people out there. And then on the government side, we like to talk about, when we're talking with our government members, the mission. How do you deliver on the mission? And a lot of that's around the experience. What experience do you deliver to the citizens? So if you're working with somebody from, the IRS, how are they better able to deliver tax insights back to the citizen? So yeah, absolutely. I think that's where that mix of tangible and intangible can be applied to both public, private sector. Let's do this real quick. Let's talk about, if we have these value challenges, how do you use the concept of like technology and economics and TBM to help get to a better place so you don't get these misses and you don't get challenges to your brand value in the near term?
No, the great thing about TBM is you have a framework, which is the bottom that has the stuff of the cost and how you bucket things. So if you got your financial accounting, so you know where the money is going. You need to connect to where the money that you're investing in tech is coming out on the other side. And that's literally what the technology economics about. It's the discipline of looking at the input to the outcomes. So the input is really what are you doing with the technology, where you expect the outcomes, and the outcome language has to be in value. And the value, we sort of hit it, has tangible value and intangible value that translates to it, but it's connecting the dots. So to really be able to manage this stuff, and the breakthroughs going back 20 years ago with TBM, and Matt can do a better job of saying, when you really think it hit. I remember going about to 2008. It gave you a way, there was no cost accounting for IT spending or how to bucket or how to even describe what's going on. And you could allocate it to businesses. But when we get to outcomes, is now is allocated to the businesses, where's the value? So it's the pathway has always been there, but now the emphasis that AI brought it out is the end point of the pathway. It's not saying we can account for all our money. The answer is what the heck is it doing and where are we seeing the impact and what's the timing of the impact? Because with AI, there's a massive amount of the time value of money, the time value of your capital, and when you're going to see the results.
Mhm.
So I know this sounds ambiguous, but it goes back to what we were talking about. It's literally connecting the dots, and TBM is the platform for understanding the costs, and you need to understand where value shows up. But in terms of business strategy, what value do you need to get the business to where it is? And you have to work backwards of what can you afford at the bottom with inflation and everything else beating you up. So I hope that helps the structure of thinking.
Yeah, it does. And so one of the things I'm curious about, as you're starting to talk to that, it brings to the idea of cost of capital to me.
Yep.
And you know, do you work with people, or what do you think about the concept of the technology cost of capital?
Oh, that's actually essential in our work right now on technology economics. Because the technology cost of capital has to do where you put the capital and where's the return going to show up. And the technology costs are so massive. Again, you take a company spending $3 billion on this stuff out of a $15 billion budget, or 20% or 30% of their budget. That's a big investment. What are the other choices the company has, and where to put that capital, and what's the return on that? So it becomes a whole other discipline. That's, again, I'm advertising for technology economics, but that's the discipline, is making the choices, because you don't have unlimited choices of capital. And you see right now with tokenomics and everything else, you make the news, Uber and stuff, they blew their entire technology budget, in 3 months or something. So people now have one bank who just realized they did 2 billion tokens in a 3 month period. It's wild. And the tokens are a pretty lousy way to measure stuff, because it'll go the way
Hmm.
of, it's measuring a fuel and that has no tangible value in itself. And revenue per token will go up if you lose less tokens, but it has nothing to do with what you're doing with the tokens. So it's
Yeah.
mysterious. So it's sort of going all over the place.
Okay.
But this is all about, you said it, if this is a business decision, it's cost of capital. And cost of capital is measured against the value and the choices a company makes.
Absolutely.
Do I build a data center here? Do I do something else here? Do I open an office here? Or do I use more AI tokens or something? And where does that money go? And that's the choices you have.
Okay. Now on the AI side, we have a couple things coming out on the TBM front. We're going to be bringing out our initial insights on how you do fully burdened costing for AI. We have a lot of things on variable costing and tokenization coming out, and we also have some work on both AI value realization and then also AI governance. And so, if you think of those as a progression, understand your cost, right? From for the fixed and from a variable side of things. Then you get into how you think about value. You can't just start at value. We're trying to get people to take a real measured approach here. Build up your costs, understand your TCO, get to your value, and then think about how you govern that whole cycle. So we've got some great insights that we're going to be releasing over the next 2 to 3 months leading up to TBM conference. We're going to put some information at the end of the podcast on details at the TBM conference. Agendas are out there and everything. You'll be able to go take a look. And if you want, you can register for it. I'll plug that Howard's going to be on stage for us again, and he's going to be talking a lot about technology economics. He's going to be talking a lot about TBM and how you bring those two concepts together to think about AI ROI. So it's going to be a great session. So would love to see everybody in November 9th to 11th down in Miami. But for today, I'm going to draw a line under it. I want you to think of three things coming out of this session. The first one, reframe the value proposition around AI. Think about tangible versus intangible and how you get that bigger discussion going to think about value. The second one, think about that technology cost of capital. This is really something that's going to be important. You can call it an AI cost of capital if you want, but the idea is you want to look at that bigger picture and really start to see is what investments are going to be best there to help you get to the rates that you need to get a return that's going to create value. And then the last one, manage the downside risk. Understand how important your AI spend is against everything else you're doing. Think about it in terms of the firm, in terms of the customer. Make sure that you're not creating a dynamic that's going to cost you some brand value. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much. Howard, would you like to say goodbye to everybody?
Goodbye to everybody. I've said it.
There you go.
Right.
All
Thank
right,
you.
folks. We'll see you again here in another week or so. Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye-bye.